Welcome to ILTV on the Hour. We're live from Israel with your top headlines from across the region. It's 7 a.m. in New York City and 2 p.m. here in Israel. I'm Caleb Ben David, and these are the latest developments coming to you live from the region. Israeli Strategic Affairs Minister Ron Dermer has officially stepped down from his role as Prime Minister Netanyahu's top aide, a role he served for over 3 years. In his resignation letter, personally addressed to the PM, Dermer said that the current government will be remembered for two things. First, the October 7th massacre, and secondly, the subsequent management of the Seven Front War, which lasted 2 years. Dermer added, quote, "In our darkest hour, the people of Israel had worthy leaders." Dermer praised Netanyahu's experience and strong leadership, saying he stood up to pressure at home and abroad, adding, "When the truth comes out and the facts are known, I am confident that appreciation for your leadership will be even greater." The U.S.-born Dermer, who became an Israeli citizen in 1997, served as one of Netanyahu's closest advisors and as a former Israeli ambassador to the U.S. During his term as minister, he was the target of criticism from some of the hostage families over his handling of the negotiations to secure their release. Upon resigning, Dermer said he had fulfilled his mission to confront Iran's nuclear threat, strengthen Israel's alliances, and help bring the hostages home. While stepping down from the government, Dermer will operate as a special envoy for Netanyahu, reportedly remaining involved on certain issues, such as efforts to expand the Abraham Accords. This according to the Times of Israel. U.S. President Donald Trump has now formally requested that Israeli President Isaac Herzog grant Prime Minister Netanyahu a full pardon for the offenses he is currently accused of in his corruption trial. Trump first made the suggestion informally in a remark directed to Herzog during his speech at the Knesset on October 13th. Now he has made that request in a letter addressed to Herzog, saying it is time to let Bibi It is time to pardon Benjamin Netanyahu and unify Israel, ending the lawfare once and for all. Prime Minister Netanyahu has stood tall for Israel in the face of strong adversaries and long odds, and his attention cannot be unnecessarily diverted. While I absolutely respect the independence of the Israeli justice system and its requirements, I believe that this case against Bibi, who has fought alongside me for a long time, including against the very tough adversary of Iran, is a politically unjustified persecution. President Herzog's office responded by saying that while, quote, the president of Israel holds President Trump in high regard, President Herzog has repeatedly clarified that anyone seeking a pardon must submit a formal request in accordance with established procedures. Prime Minister Netanyahu has himself not officially requested a pardon from Herzog. Syria's President Ahmed Al-Shaara says that President Trump backs his demand for a full Israeli withdrawal from all of the areas the IDF moved into last year before Damascus proceeds with any normalization of ties with Jerusalem. Shaara made the claim in an interview in the Washington Post today following his meeting with Trump at the White House on Monday. Shaara told the Post that Trump, quote, supports our perspective as well, and he will push as quickly as possible in order to reach a solution for this. Now, Israeli troops crossed the northern border to secure parts of Syrian territory after the fall of the Bashar Assad regime in order to prevent Hezbollah and other militant Islamic forces from moving into those areas and to also deter attacks by them on the resident Druze population. Al-Shaara said the IDF presence is no longer needed with the ejection of Hezbollah troops from Syria. He also rejected an Israeli demand for the border area to be demilitarized, saying Israel is being motivated more by expansionist aims than security concerns. The U.S. State Department is denying reports in Saudi media claiming that President Trump's special envoy and son-in-law Jared Kushner met with one of the leaders of the Palestinian militias in Gaza opposed to Hamas. The report claims that Kushner met with Yasser Abu Shabab, who leads a local militia in Rafah, at the U.S.-led civilian military command center in Kiryat Gat. This is part of the effort to create an alternative security force to Hamas in post-war Gaza. Abu Shabab's militia is also said being considered as part of a plan that would have 200 Hamas terrorists still hiding out in tunnels beneath Rafah be given safe passage across the Egyptian border into Sinai and then on to a third country. Kushner and Prime Minister Netanyahu reportedly agreed to that arrangement in a meeting on Monday, although no nation has yet accepted, at least publicly, to take the terrorists in. IDF Colonel Avichay Adraee, the IDF's Arabic language spokesperson, is retiring after nearly 2 decades in the role. Adraee built a massive following across the Arab world using social media to counter propaganda and promote understanding, becoming a household name in much of the Arab world for his work, even earning the nickname Mr. Evacuate Now, this for his warnings to civilians to clear active war zones. The colonel's work earned him praise, sometimes ridicule, and occasionally threats from across the region. Adraee often spoke directly to audiences in Lebanon, Syria, and Gaza in perfect Arabic, breaking through hostile media barriers. His unique style made him one of the most influential Israeli figures in Arab digital and media spaces. Good luck, Colonel. The return this week of Lieutenant Hadar Golden's body from Gaza after 11 years proved another benefit resulting from the ceasefire that ended Israel's 2-year war with Hamas. But it came amid increasing signs of strain on the agreement, raising serious concerns over how it could move forward. The same can also be said with the ceasefire agreement between Israel and Lebanon, as the IDF continues its strikes on Hezbollah targets, as the Iranian-backed terror movement continues to try and rebuild its military infrastructure along the northern border. Well, for more on this and other issues, we're joined by Dr. Eric Mandel. He's the founder and director of MEPIN, the Middle East Political and Information Network, and Dr. Eyal Pinko, an intelligence, cyber, and security expert. Gentlemen, thanks for joining us. Eric, before we get into some of the issues I just mentioned, I want to get your response to the resignation of Minister Ron Dermer today. Certainly, he's been a key figure in dealing with some of those issues over the past 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, more than 2 years. Even when he was ambassador in the United States, he was still considered Prime Minister Netanyahu's key and most trusted aide for advice. People would refer to him here, and I think also in Israel, as Bibi's brain. So he was involved with almost everything, whether it was the Iran portfolio, dealing with expanding the Abraham Accords. So with this diplomacy, security, he was involved in so much. And the fact that he is leaving an official position, I don't believe he's going to be going that far away. He's going to be a special envoy, but somebody who has been pivotal. I think the fact that he became more visible and more of a target recently for criticism, certainly during the last 2 years with the hostage families as another target besides Bibi, probably didn't make him feel very good. I think he probably preferred working behind the scenes. So I think he's not totally gone, but I think he would prefer to be a little more in the shadows. And I think he should, from an American perspective, I think he was a tremendous asset to the prime minister and giving really sage advice.
Right. And Eyal, certainly Minister Dermer resigns at a really what some people are calling a critical time for some of the ceasefires he had negotiated, Eyal, especially the Gaza ceasefire. First of all, I just want to get your reaction to the situation with these 200 terrorists in and of itself, because of the agreement that supposedly was reached, and this is not officially confirmed, that they would be given safe passage abroad. But maybe also looking at it, the bigger context, surely this is one of those issues that should have been sort of dealt with or resolved before the ceasefire, or agreed to before the ceasefire replaced, perhaps emblematic as the kind of making it up as you go along approach that seems to have characterized the situation in Gaza since the ceasefire started.
Yes, in Hebrew there is a very strange phrase we call it a big head, to think in larger dimension and all. And this, I think, what is characterizing the Israeli approach. We have an agreement of a ceasefire. Everything goes as it should be. But Israel, from some reason, before the other side is respecting and putting the efforts to respect the agreement, Israel is doing much more than it needed. So, for example, Israel released the prisoners much before time when it needed. Israel is delivering much more food and other humanitarian aid to Gaza before the other side is agree or putting his part of the agreement. This is the 200 terrorists over there. This is totally part of this behavior of Israel of not doing or not conducting a good negotiation. This issue is totally not connected to the agreement. Israel had to take those guys to put them in custody, to put them in prison, to charge them as a terrorist, and that's all. And we are. They said the people in Gaza said, no, put them alive so you will get the body that they had to give it in any case, and we are giving them more and more and more, thinking that they maybe there will be some kind of Western guys, and they they respect the agreement. They're not. So
Right.
this is what we see.
And Eric, I think I really gave pretty much the Israeli perspective on many analysts here on how the agreement is proceeding. Maybe you can give us more of the perspective from the U.S. of the Trump administration, which is pressing Israel to move forward on some of these matters, even as Eyal points out, Hamas has failed to fulfill some of its side of the agreement, precisely the return of the bodies of the 4 remaining hostages still held in Gaza.
So I think it's important for the people of Israel to realize that American interests, certainly for the Trump administration, don't always coincide with Israeli interests. And the Trump administration very much wants to keep the ceasefires going, even if whether in the north and the south, they want to have these victories. I think from Israel's point of view, they look at these as like the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, where they're ceasefires and they could be reneged at any time the enemy has an advantage. Regarding the 200 terrorists that are in the tunnels, I would say from a dispassionate view, if they showed Israel where the tunnels are that they're hiding to save Israel a tremendous amount of work and risk, that would be a good idea to release them, although it's supposedly they're going to be released. The idea that my administration, I believe, mistakenly believes that releasing them, and if they put down their arms, would be a good precedent. That should not be a precedent at all. I mean, they need to get out, and putting down their arms should be the minimum. Shouldn't even be a concession. But again, in order to keep this ceasefire going, and my country is so invested now. You have the center in Kiryat Gat. There's word that there's going to be a huge American-run center with international troops for the stabilization force. So there's tremendous American prestige and political capital that's being used here. So again, the eyes are on American interests, and it gets to the pressuring of Israel, and that it relates to Turkey's pressure, Erdogan's pressure in wanting to be involved there. From my point of view, Israel should not concede on Turkey being involved at all. They are the muscle of the Muslim Brotherhood, and the Qatar should not be there because of the financier of the Muslim Brotherhood, and they are supporters of Hamas. They don't want Hamas to totally go. So again, I think the key here is how do you play that with the president feeling he could do pretty much whatever he wants because of all the things he has done for Israel, starting, of course, with Iran and beyond.
Right. Certainly you could respond to some of what Eric said. He raises up these reports of this beyond what already exists in Kiryat Gat, this apparently massive base that's going to be built on the Gaza with border, put foreign troops in Israel, really for the first time stationed here, certainly to that degree. Are there not some worrying precedents being set? Certainly, Israel's trusting the Trump administration, but administrations change in Washington, and these precedents could come back and haunt Israel.
Yeah, I think the most important sentence that was said by my colleague is that Israel doesn't understand that the American has the American agenda and not the Israeli agenda. And the Israelis and the Israeli government and the Israeli people tend to forget about it. So I do believe that I will say that from my perspective, the base in Kiryat Gat, the American base, and the other nationals, I don't think it's a good sign. because at first we tracked some of the Trump sayings that he wants to make the northern part of Gaza Strip as American autonomy, as part of economical approach of competing with the Chinese Belt and Road Initiative, and to create alternative economical routes goes from India through the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, and finishing in the American autonomy in the northern part of in the northern part, sorry, of
Gaza.
And I think this is the first step of that. So I think that's the move over there. And I can tell you that I'm personally pretty much worried about some kind of, what is important is below the radar. And I hope that this is not a sign that there is some kind of a movement towards a way or path that will connect the Palestinian Authority with Gaza Strip, that will be, international territory, and will divide Israel into two parts. And I really have worries about that this is not part of this move. There are many things that we don't know about the agreement between the US and Israel, and I'm pretty worried about that.
All right, gentlemen, we could spend even a lot more. There's a lot more to say about Gaza, but there are some other fronts Israel's confronting. I want to now move to the northern front. There, I would say the situation really almost can't really call it a ceasefire. I mean, Israel is just this week launching strikes, at least 5 Hezbollah operatives taken out just in the past few days in South Lebanon. Hezbollah seems to be rearming and retrenching in South Lebanon, and one feels that at any moment that situation can explode. I mean, Eric, where does it go from here? Because right now there does seem to be serious deterioration there in the north. I would say not deterioration, just the situation there seems increasingly like it's heading towards another conflict.
Well, my country's expectation of what the Lebanese armed forces or the will or the ability of the Lebanese government to really put down Hezbollah and for a country to fight with one force was totally mistaken. Hezbollah is still, even though they have been tremendously degraded, is still tremendously in power. I think political influence, and they still have military influence. And they're now operating some places below the Litani River. I think a lot of this goes back, people forget, to the United Nations Security Council resolution. 1701 said they can't operate south of the Litani, but there was 1559, which said Hezbollah had to be disarmed every place. Now, you've had American envoys like Morgan Ortega bring this up, but I think it falls on deaf ears. Even if the Lebanese government want to do it, they just don't have that ability. So Israel's been going in really since the ceasefire, almost on a daily basis, enforcing what the Lebanese armed forces cannot and is unwilling to do. And even Israel, I remember having this discussion even years ago, that so much is hidden in civilian areas in southern Lebanon, and the Lebanese armed forces says they will not go into private residences to do this. So how are you going to disarm Hezbollah? So will there be another war? Again, I hate to say this, and it's probably overused. The question is not if, but it's going to be when, especially as Hezbollah rearms. And we even hear that rumors, and they'll tie in eventually when we talk about Syria, that maybe some of the land corridor through Syria to rearm Hezbollah has maybe reopened partially. Certainly it gets along with people being bribed or whatever to make those things happen, but they're coming in from different ways, and it's a tremendous problem for Israel, but it's also a tremendous problem for America, which thinks that Lebanon is capable of doing this, and I just don't believe they are.
Eyal, I want to get your response to this. I mean, those airstrikes, Israel's experience is that you can only really achieve so much from airstrikes. And that at a certain point, if you agree with Eric that the war, a more broader conflict with Hezbollah is almost inevitable, it seems.
Yeah. First, I will tell you from my own perspective. After the Second Lebanese War, I was a young commander, Navy commander. And 1701 UN resolution was a fiction from the beginning. It was just a fiction. The UN forces were there in the sea, on the land. It was nothing. The Hezbollah just were ruling everything everywhere in Lebanon, in the northern part, in the southern part. So resolution 1701 was just a fiction. And you see that in the last few months, the Iranians are gaining power again. Hezbollah is gaining power again with the aid of Iran. And in the Middle East, things came to normality, which is an extensive force built up from all over. And now Hezbollah with the new Lebanese government, Hezbollah wants to show them that he is the real owner, which he is. And once again, not understanding the Middle East culture, the Lebanese government cannot do that. And I think that Western governments, as the US, the UK, the French government, they don't see the reality as it is here. And as you see now, the force buildup is high. They are sending weapons from Iran through the northern part of Syria and the northern part of Jordan, which are territories which are no man's lands over there. They are rebuilding. They are showing the government, the Lebanese government, that they can do whatever they want. And I think that the Israeli attacks are coming in the way that nobody will drag into another war, another escalation. And that's the reason that it's only from or by aerial strikes and not by any kind of ground forces maneuver. And this is the main issue with that. And we are striking. They are continue what they want to do, and I believe that in the near future we will see another escalation between Hezbollah and Israel. I think everything goes there. The narratives that are being transmitted by Hezbollah heads, by Israel as well, and it goes there.
Right. And Eric, now you've both mentioned Syria, especially the situation in South Syria. President Al-Shaara having, we should say, a historic meeting at the White House with President Trump, but it was very low-key and maybe a little disappointing for those that are already projecting Syria joining the Abraham Accords. Al-Shaara saying Israel, the IDF must withdraw completely from those positions in South Syria until there's any normalization, but also rejecting calls for demilitarization, shown in South Syria. So from that perspective, perhaps a little disappointing, the meeting between President Al-Shaara and President Trump.
Well, what it is that President Trump and his administration see, again, interests diverge here with Israel. They see an opportunity to reorient Syria towards Washington, and maybe towards some of the Gulf states, and unfortunately against Israel's interests towards Turkey. The administration thinks Turkey is a good thing to have in Syria, and that is a very bad thing for Israel's security interests to be there. Turkey with Qatar are very dangerous animals to be, whether in Gaza or up in Syria. Now, what Al-Shaara said, that normalization was never on the table here because his name was Al-Golani, before Al-Shaara. This is, the Golan Heights is something he can't give up. And, I do believe that away from the suit underneath, there is still the spots of Al-Qaeda that may still be there. And I think, you should always remember who, he was and what, and even if he isn't, he already there's over 20 offices, according to Alma Research, that are radicalized jihadists who are part of his army. You look at who his administration is, this is not a compromising administration. He was very non-conciliatory regarding the minorities. He was saying, they just want autonomy. And in the administration, my administration has been basically saying we want a centralized Syria, and that really goes directly against Israel's interests, because the Kurds and the Druze and the Alawites and the Christians are going to be persecuted. And I think we're being fooled here in the United States a little bit about what his agenda is. Now, if Israel could get, in my opinion, a true deconfliction agreement where they did not have any Syrian troops below Damascus, then you can consider removing from the 9 topographical areas Israel has moved into in the buffer zone. But he's made it very clear that he's not interested in that. He says Syria has to control everything. And
right.
so,
I want to give Eyal a chance then to also weigh in whether he thinks there's any realistic chance, for example, even that deconfliction agreement that Eric just mentioned.
Yes, in the Bible it says, or there is a question: will a tiger change his stripes? And unfortunately, the answer is no. And this is exactly like that. Al-Shaara is still butchering the other Muslim groups, like the Alawites, is butchering the Druze. Keep on doing that. And I don't know why the Western countries, including France, Germany, and also the US, is just avoiding those sites. And suddenly he became a saint. He's a nice guy. He's a saint. He's to reconstruct Syria, but he's still as a terrorist. He was born like that. He was educated like that, and he is still doing this kind of terror acts against the people in Syria. Taking that into consideration, Erdogan moves in Syria is also a very important player. We didn't speak about his involvement in Gaza, which is very, very critical. Yossi Cohen, the ex-Mossad, the head of the Mossad, once said, you can find it in the newspapers, he said many years ago that Turkey became a more dangerous enemy than Iran. And you see Erdogan's move, unfortunately. Turkey was a great friend of Israel. Erdogan's moves in Syria, in Gaza, with the Muslim Brotherhood, also influencing in the US. We cannot forget the massive influence in the US of the Muslim Brotherhood from Turkey, from Qatar, which influenced the public opinion. We can see what happened in New York in the last week. This is one of the signs for that. I think the mess in Syria is also critical. I don't see any kind of Abraham Accords agreement with Syria in the next future. And one of the chaos that we are facing, not only in Lebanon, in Gaza, it's also in Syria as well.
All right, gentlemen, concerning picture, but of course, Israel will have to navigate as best it can in these choppy waters. Doctors Eric Mandel, Eyal Pinko, thank you for joining us on ILTV.
Thank you.
Well, after that, let's end on some good news. Israeli actress Gal Gadot has been named as the winner of the 2026 Genesis Prize. That's the so-called Nobel Prize for the Jewish world that carries with it a grant of $1 million. Gadot was commended for her advocacy and support of Israel and for the victims of October 7th. The Wonder Woman actress joins such former Genesis Prize winners such as the Argentinian President Javier Milei, director Steven Spielberg, former U.S. Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the Robert Kraft, the owner and of the New England Patriots, the noted Jewish philanthropist, violinist Itzhak Perlman, UK Chief Rabbi, the late Lord Jonathan Sacks, and many more. Now, Gadot says she intends to donate the $1 million prize to proceeds to help Israelis heal, rebuild, and recover after October 7th. Now, she did receive immense backlash from fans internationally after posting on her social media calls to return the hostages from Hamas captivity. But Gadot's efforts didn't stop with social media. She organized private screenings of raw footage from the October 7 attacks for world readers and top Hollywood executives. A Wonder Woman indeed. Congratulations, Gal Gadot. And thank you for joining us on this edition of ILTV News. Continue watching us or follow our app. There's a QR code on your screen. I'm Khaled Ben David, and thank you for joining us on ILTV.